Hi, I'm Sharooz from Sample Magic. Today we're in my studio in North London and we're going to be discussing Bloq, our brand new multi-sample collection. Bloq's been about a year in the making. It started life as a little private sample collection of mine, so I wouldn't have to cart all this gear out to various studios I was using around the world. It's basically a collection of my favorite presets and patches, which I've built myself and programmed over God knows how many years, and also using a dedicated signal path that I know well in this studio, the Prism Orpheus soundcard, things like the distressor on drum hits, the SSL bus compressor on drum loops, and the Focusrite 430 channel strip. A lot of the basses were made using the Juno 106 and the Nord Lead 3, again making use of the wonderful filters in here and the resonance on there. The Nord Lead 3 in particular has some of my favorite patches of all time in it. Again, use different filter settings, different little chord shapes and memories. And even the sequencer functionality within here. The Focusrite ISO 430 was a go-to signal path for a lot of the synths. We warmed things up a little bit using the gain in here, some of the EQs and compression and limiting in there. The distressor featured quite heavily on some of the drum hits with its crazy transient smack, and the Prism Orpheus was the go-to ADDA. The TL Audio EQ2 was used on a few of the stereo sound sources, and the SSL G-series compressor on some of the drum loops with the DBX 165 used on some of the synth basses as well. Over here we've got the Roland Jupiter-6 and the SH-101. These were used quite extensively for the pads and basses. One of my favourite pad sounds. And the SH-101, which is synonymous obviously with deep, fat, warm basses. Straight off the top we just got a couple of the waveforms in here, like the sub-oscillator. Did various different low-pass filter settings, and the saw in here, bit of pulse width modulation on there, and so all these sort of sounds are represented quite nicely in there. So this is the Kontakt version of Bloq. We've got our own little customized GUI here along with the main synth controls. We've got a little basic sequencer here running over 32 steps, and we've got the effects here, the delay, chorus, reverb and phaser. Just going through some of my favorite patches here. This Lush Nord Pad 2. Moving on through the patches, we've got this retro polychord sound here, which with a little bit of unison and detuning and stereo spread just sounds fantastic. Many of the patches have also made use of the extensive sequencer function within the Kontakt script. And this syncs to the tempo of your project. You can also add swing, work at various different rates, and just move these up and down to represent different steps and different octaves and different velocities. One of my very favorite things about Bloq are the extensive range of bass sounds we've got in here. Dark FM bass being one of my favorites. With a little bit of tape warmth here, a little bit of saturation, and bringing the sampler mode into vintage, dropping the bit rate and sample rate down, we can get some really, really nice grimy effects, boosting the mids and highs a bit. One of my favourite sounds here is the house organ sound. We've got some fantastic brass sounds here for the more new disco-y sort of sound. Lusher soundscapes. And something that's worth noting here is the fantastic chord functionality we have within the Kontakt version here. And we've just got one note here being held down, being played here. but coming out as a chord. We can change the root, we can change from a major to a minor to a sus7. So if we have a major 7, for instance, we can just bring it across all the keys. And while this is happening, we can make use of all the filter functionality and the high-pass filters and the auto panning and all the rest of it. And moving to some of the acid sounds here. And again, marrying these with some of the filter settings and the tape drive just takes this into a different dimension altogether. We've also represented some of the raw 303 acid waveforms, the squares and saw waves, just a little bit of subtle filter resonance in there. And some straight square wave sequences, which with a little bit of processing in here can turn into something altogether different. Bloq comes in two parts: Bloq synth, which is obviously the synth samples, and Bloq drum, which has its own dedicated drum sequencer and various other effects for each output. Some of the drum machines we've used, the Roland TR-808, the 606, the 626, which is out of shot, the 808, the 909, the CR68. We've got the Roland MC202, which is obviously a synth, but we kind of included some little noisy bits of it, white noise bits in some of the drum hits section. We've got the Sequential Circuits drum tracks, the drumulator, which you might just get out of shot, the Korg Rhythm 55B, the MXR-185, the Korg Super Drums, the Soundmaster SR-88, and a couple other little boxes down here as well. We basically sampled the things like the 808. We just did every single hit at every possible tone and pitch iteration that we could possibly get. So what we had to do is basically have it in this little MIDI sync rhythm and just have it kind of running by itself, and just take each hit sort of in isolation at different sort of decay and tone settings. The same with the snare, and we just did this by literally isolating different bits in a rhythm and trying all the different tunings and conga tom settings. So that was a bit of a challenge. I think we ended up with about 150 808 hits in all. We did a similar thing with the 909, where we had every hit at every different, like for example the snare at different tone settings, different snap settings, the tom at different tunings and different decays. We had the ride at various different tunings, and same with the crash, and the hi-hats at different decay settings. So we just tried to get a really good broad overall mixture of different sounds from all these different machines. Bloq for Kontakt comes in two different parts: Bloq synth, which we've just been through, and Bloq drums, which includes 35 bespoke kits featuring samples from the various array of vintage analog and digital drum machines. Each kit has 8 pads. Each pad has different samples laid across it, which can very easily just be interchanged using the sample button here. We can change the start point on each voice. We can randomize the start point on each voice. We've got individual tunings for each pad and different high pass and low pass filter settings, and this very nice transient designer here which brings out the attack and sustain portions on each hit. We've got EQ, tape drive settings and compression settings for each pad as well. Drum hits can be varied from here. We can go between the different kits, so we can have an analog kick playing along with an 808 snare and have some toms here which say come from a different drum machine, such as the 606. We can add a really nice little bit of randomized pitch and shuffle in here as well. The shuffle setting in particular is something I really like on here. And for each of the 8 pads we can change the drum machine type and the instrument type. Got the MXR in here spread across 2 kits, and you'll notice that there's some quite extensive reverb on the snare there. The reverb and delay settings, master settings, can be adjusted here, and each pad can be assigned to a separate output within Kontakt, within your DAW. We've got different sends for each hit as well, and we can actually vary the sample rate on each hit as well. Moving into the 606 kits, 626, 707. If you noticed earlier, we mentioned that we'd sampled every kick, snare and tom at various different snap and pitch decay settings. You can actually vary the kick sample just by pulling this lever, and you'll notice that up to 32 samples can be loaded into any one pad. We've got another 808 kit that makes full use of that functionality by having a set of 8 completely different samples in there. .909 kit, and then I put some of my own personal favorite drum sounds into the Sharooz kits here.